So, today I'm just going to be talking about how culture and your geographical location can affect your food and your diet. So, my thesis was that the region where a person lives and their culture can change their diet and physical health. When someone says, "How about Italian food for dinner?" or "Mexican sounds great tonight," Italian food is thought of as a bunch of different spices and normally a carbohydrate heavy food with lots of oils, fresh vegetables like tomatoes, and an herb like basil, with a dairy product like Parmesan or mozzarella. Whether it's pizza, pasta, or sandwich, they typically follow that guideline in Italy. Whether it's Mexican food, the rice, beans, a large amount of fresh fruits and vegetables, and a completely different spice blend than the one thought of from Italy, it all comes to mind. This is seen in fajitas, quesadillas, tamales, or an elote. But what about it? What am I trying to get at here? Well, it's that location in relation to food is everything. It's what controls the spices, meats, fruits and vegetables, and dairy products that are available, which leads to completely different ways of eating and cooking and enjoying your meals. It doesn't just end at what people have access to or what's in their tradition, but it also depends on the culture surrounding food. When is it eaten? How is it meant to be enjoyed, and what values is placed upon those meals? It's important to recognize that not one place or culture is correct in the way that they choose to eat. However, some might be a bit more beneficial as a lifelong diet or for physical health, and they each come with their own set of positives and negatives. These are just some definitions of the geographical location, culture, region, economics, and agriculture, which are a lot of the main topics that I will be talking about. So, my first topic is agriculture. Depending on geographical location and the culture surrounding it, mealtimes, diets, and physical health will be affected. So, the first way that agriculture is affected by geographical location is just by what grows in that climate and in that soil. Foods like corn, potatoes, bananas are all grown in sub Saharan African countries, while in Canada, foods like apples, asparagus, and rhubarb are grown. So, due to our drastically different climates and soil types in these two different continents, completely different foods are going to be grown. But agriculture doesn't just end at what food is grown, it includes the farming of livestock, like chicken and cows for meat. And while farming is done all over the world, the practice of which it's done, what kinds of animals are used, is relative to geography. As an example, in India, with a large portion of their population being vegetarian and a large portion being Muslim, and those that practice Islam have very specific rules to how their livestock is killed and prepared. So, the way that our livestock in Canada is treated before death and the way that the livestock in India is treated is going to be widely different due to our geography and the culture surrounding how meat can be prepared. So, with these differences in what's grown and with the differences in what is farmed and butchered, we're going to have very different meal times. Living in Canada, we're very lucky to be able to have access to the food that we have all year long through farming and greenhouses. And positively, our diets are able to be well rounded with different nutrients because we are able to eat such a variety of foods. Sticking with the same example as before, the people living in Africa are going to have a much different variety of vitamins and minerals in their diet because of what is grown and butchered. Negatively, though, grocery stores may not be able to as abundant as they are here in North America. So their diet and nutrition is going to be much different than ours. However, overall, agriculture is important to our diets globally, and our overall physical health allows for a myriad of fruits and vegetables to be farmed and animals to be raised. So, with these differences in our location and in our culture, different foods are farmed and grown, which lead to different vitamins, nutrients, and minerals being involved in our diets from continent to continent. The next thing that I'm looking at is economics. And not depending on the size of a region, economics affects the health and wellness of everyone's diet. Canada is very lucky to be able to be in a good economic state, especially in the middle of a pandemic, while some other countries are unfortunately not as in comfortable situations. And economics can really change a person's diet depending on something as large as the continent or even within a city. So, comparing those as an example in poverty or even just below middle class in California to those that are vloggers in LA, just depending on status and wealth, they will have extremely different diets living in California. In order to clarify what someone of a higher economic status's diet would look like compared to someone with a lower economic status in places like California, well, those with more money are going to have a much more nutrient dense diet because they're able to afford it, while someone that is experiencing poverty or even homelessness is not going to be able to feed themselves the way that someone else that's making a lot more money would be able to. People living in an area with less money, more poverty, and a higher homeless population will experience a higher rate of obesity, diabetes, nutrient deficiencies, and other food related illnesses. Stemming from a lack of nutrition education and other socioeconomic factors, people living in these situations do not spend their limited money on a variety of fresh fruits and vegetables, but rather higher calorie, high density, and higher sugar and sodium content foods. So, my question is it fair to say that the poor overall health and diet of someone is because of their own bad nutrition? Or could it be due to where they live? Could it be considered cultural for certain neighborhoods to eat traditionally good or bad? To the right, I have a photo of Chinatown in Toronto, and I wanted to compare that to Kensington Market as well as the financial district. All three have people living at very different levels of economic status. So rather than saying that one level of economic status is better than the other, it is comparable to say that places like Chinatown would be eating food with much higher levels of sodium content compared to someone living in the financial district. Not to say that one is better than the other, but due to their economic status, the lives and diets of these people will be different just within one city. The last topic that I'm covering is tradition and how the region and the culture can change how and why we eat, what we celebrate, and who we choose to share our meals with. Hopefully, everyone can think of a tradition that they have or something that they've celebrated. I had my birthday last week and I celebrated by having cake. And on Sundays, my family and I go to Dairy Queen. Celebrations and traditions affect what we eat. Those are affected by region and culture. So, region and culture are therefore connected to tradition and celebrations. For birthdays in Canada, cake is the most common treat to have, with many things like ice cream cake, chocolate, vanilla. We choose this because it's high in sugar, it's high in fat, and we think that we deserve to treat ourselves on our birthday to celebrate. In China, they celebrate their birthday a little bit differently by eating noodles. They've chosen noodles in order to represent longevity. And their birthday celebration is less about treating yourself the way ours is and more about honoring your age. To the right, I have a photo of these noodles, and they're supposed to just be all one, so it's like one long noodle, and the hard-boiled eggs represents wealth. I think that the comparison of Canada's birthday cake to China's noodles is a perfect example of how tradition and values within your culture can really affect how you eat and what you eat and how you celebrate things within your region. Another perfect example of cultural and geographical traditions changing what we eat is that in Canada and the United States, Christmas is widely celebrated, and foods like turkey, dinner rolls, green beans, stuffing, and cranberry sauce are all enjoyed. But in a country like Israel, where there's many more people practicing Judaism, it's much more likely for Christmas to be not celebrated, and in its place, Hanukkah. Foods like latkes, sufganyo, and lukumades are traditionally eaten during Hanukkah. To the right, I have a photo of a lukma, which is just a short form for lukumades, and it's just like a ball of dough, and it's drizzled in honey, and you could put crushed pistachios or sesame seeds on top, which sounds delicious, and I actually think I'm gonna try and make it. Either way, this is just a perfect example of the way that our celebrations and our traditions will change how we share our food and why we're sharing it and how we make it. In most Southeast Asian countries, eating with your hands is just normal. And in China, slurping your food isn't rude, it's a way of saying that you're enjoying it. In North America, these are not traditional ways of eating. But I know that my Nona has taught me that her wooden spoon is sacred and she would not mix with anything else, and that putting eggs in the middle of the flour in order to stir is the most important way to make pasta. And while it might just seem like these are just another way of cooking, it is very important to our diet and our overall physical health, and it changes the way that we eat. Foods like white sticky rice are going to be much more common in Malaysia, in the Philippines, and other of these Southeast Asian countries because they're using their hands, and that way the rice isn't going to fall apart. Perhaps seaweed and grape leaves are going to be eaten way more commonly in order to grab the food. And in North America, we might choose to eat more runny foods in comparison. What I'm saying here is that depending on how we're eating, how we're cooking, and who we're sharing our food with, will change how we prepare our meals and what we eat. In a summary, there's many things that contribute to a person's diet, and a lot of those things can be related back to the region of which they're from and the culture that surrounds the food. In terms of agriculture, location is everything about what can and can't be grown. And in terms of culture, why are they growing it? And what benefits the community by growing that food? Relative to the economy, regions with more financial stability will be more likely to have a more nutritious diet, be more educated on having good nutrition, and have better access to health resources. And culturally, their economics will place people in certain parts of their city or country, which will change what they're eating. Lastly, traditions and celebrations will change more than just birthday dinners. Geographically and culturally, traditions change meal times and what is eaten at celebrations. In conclusion, food is a large part of everyone's life everywhere. Whether it's a struggle, a celebration, a burden, or a blessing, food is just a part of life. In more ways than we realize, our choices with what we eat are being influenced. Our location in our country, city, or continent, as well as the culture developed in those regions, can greatly affect how, when, and what we eat, therefore contributing to our overall diet and physical health.